The winter wind howled through the cracks of the old farmhouse, its weathered boards groaning under the weight of 5 generations of Sullivan memories. I stood in the kitchen, my fingers tracing the warm countertop where Grandma Rose had once guided my hands as we baked her legendary apple pies. The air still clung to the scent of cinnamon and coffee, as if she might appear at any moment, her checkered apron tied snugly, her knowing smile crinkling the corners of her eyes. But Grandma Rose was gone, slipping away in her sleep just 2 weeks prior at the age of 92. I'm Hannah Sullivan, 28, the youngest grandchild, and apparently the only one who saw the 200-acre farm as more than a dollar sign. Honestly, Hannah, I don't know what you're going to do with this place, my sister Rachel scoffed, perched precariously on a kitchen chair as though the dust might dare to stain her designer clothes. You can barely keep your apartment plants alive. I ignored her, my focus on the recipe box before me. Each handwritten card was a relic, filled with Grandma's secrets. Add extra vanilla, makes everything better, or don't tell your grandfather, but a splash of bourbon in the pie crust is our little secret. The land isn't even good for farming anymore. Marcus, my brother, chimed in from his post by the window, his voice dripping with dismissive certainty. Soil's depleted. You should sell while the market's hot. What they really meant was, why did Grandma Rose leave the farm to you, and not divide it equally among all 6 of us? The others had received cash inheritances, substantial ones, while I inherited the worthless family farm, the one that had been in the Sullivan name since 1875. The reading of the will a week earlier had been a powder keg. The lawyer adjusted his glasses and announced, "To my granddaughter Hannah, I leave the Sullivan family farm, all 200 acres, the main house, and every outbuilding, to be held in her name alone, with no obligation to share or sell." The explosion that followed still echoed in my mind. "That's not fair," Rachel had shrieked. "The land alone must be worth millions." "Actually," the lawyer interjected, "Mrs. Sullivan had the property assessed recently. Given the soil quality and remote location, its value is significantly less than you might assume." That had silenced them somewhat, especially once they heard the exact figures of their own inheritances. But I saw the looks they exchanged, the way their eyes narrowed as I accepted the old brass key to the farmhouse. They thought I was foolish to want this place. Maybe I was, but they didn't understand. They hadn't spent every summer here like I had, helping Grandma Rose tend her garden, collect eggs, or sit on the wraparound porch during thunderstorms, listening to her stories of the Sullivans who had worked this land. They hadn't helped her digitize the old family photos and documents during my college years, preserving our history while they were all too busy with their own lives. "At least let us help you sell it," Marcus offered, feigning reasonableness. "I know developers who might be interested. They're always looking for large parcels, even if the soil's bad." "I'm not selling," I said, snapping the recipe box shut with more force than I intended. "This is home." Rachel laughed. "Hannah, you're a graphic designer. You work from home. What do you know about running a farm?" "Enough to try," I replied, "and I'll learn the rest." The truth was, I'd been preparing for this moment for years, though I'd never told my family. During those long summers with Grandma Rose, between the baking and the storytelling, she taught me about crop rotation, soil management, the natural springs that fed the property, and the old maps tucked away in the attic. "Land holds secrets," she used to say, her blue eyes twinkling. "You just have to know how to listen." My siblings left eventually, shaking their heads at my stubbornness. That first night alone in the farmhouse, wrapped in one of Grandma's quilts, I listened to the wind and remembered our last conversation, just days before she passed. "The others won't understand at first," she'd said, her voice weak, but her mind razor-sharp. "They see the surface, the worn buildings, the tired soil. But you, my dear girl, you see with your heart." She'd pressed an old leather journal into my hands. "When the time is right, this will help you understand. Promise me you'll wait until you're alone to read it." I had promised. Now, sitting in her favorite armchair by the fireplace, I opened the journal carefully. Inside, in her familiar handwriting, was a story I'd never heard. My dearest Hannah, by now, the will has been read, and you know the farm is yours. What you don't know, what none of the family knows, is why this land is so much more valuable than it appears. The journal revealed an incredible truth. In 1875, my great-great-grandfather Patrick Sullivan hadn't chosen this land at random. He'd had information, passed down through generations of his Irish family, about reading the land for what lay beneath. He'd selected this plot because of subtle signs suggesting mineral wealth deep underground. But the technology to reach it hadn't existed then. Over the years, the family forgot why Patrick had been so insistent on this exact piece of land. They only knew it was theirs, and that it must be protected. My hands trembled as I turned the pages. Grandma had included survey maps, geological reports she'd secretly commissioned, and correspondence with experts who had confirmed what Patrick Sullivan had suspected all those years ago. The oil companies have been sniffing around for years, she wrote. I've turned them all away, waiting for the right time, the right person. You, Hannah, with your respect for our history and your modern business sense, are that person. The next morning, I made calls. Within a week, I had meetings scheduled with geological survey teams and environmental assessors. I also hired a lawyer, not the family lawyer, but someone recommended by a friend, a specialist in mineral rights and land contracts. I kept everything quiet, refusing to answer my siblings' increasingly nosy questions. But word spreads fast in small towns. When survey trucks appeared on the property, the rumors began to fly. It all came to a head at a family dinner at my parents' house 1 month after I'd inherited the farm. I hadn't wanted to go, but Mom insisted the family needed to clear the air. I should have known it was an ambush. So, Dad said as soon as we sat down, I hear you've had some interesting visitors out at the farm. Just doing my due diligence, I replied, focusing on buttering my roll. Due diligence? Rachel's voice dripped with sarcasm. Is that what you call secretly meeting with oil companies? I looked up, meeting her accusing stare. How did you... Pete down at the diner saw the trucks, Marcus cut in. Said they were from Western Oil and Gas. Which means, Rachel continued, you've known all along that the farm was valuable. That's why you wouldn't sell, isn't it? You've been playing us for fools. Playing you for fools? I set down my fork, anger rising. Like you played Grandma Rose for a fool all these years? When's the last time any of you visited her? When's the last time you showed any interest in the farm beyond what you could get for selling it? That's not fair, Mom protested. We were busy with our own lives. Too busy to spend time with her, but not too busy to show up with your hands out when she died. The words came out sharper than I intended, but I couldn't stop. Do you know she kept every birthday card I sent her? She had them in a special box in her dresser. Know how many were from the rest of you? 0. This isn't about birthday cards, Marcus snapped. This is about you hiding valuable information from the family. That oil belongs to all of us. No, it doesn't. I stood, my chair scraping against the floor. The farm, and everything under it, belongs to me. Grandma Rose made that very clear in her will. We'll contest it, Rachel threatened. We'll prove she wasn't in her right mind. I wouldn't do that if I were you. I reached into my bag and pulled out Grandma's old iPad. Before you try anything, you might want to watch this. I pulled up a video and set it on the table. Grandma Rose's face filled the screen, recorded during her last Christmas alive. She looked tired but alert, her blue eyes sharp. If you're watching this, it means Hannah has found it necessary to show you why I made the choices I did. The room fell silent as she methodically detailed every visit, every phone call, every interaction she'd had with each family member over the past decade. She'd documented everything: the missed birthdays, the rushed holidays, the transparent attempts to curry favor when they thought she might be updating her will. but it was the last part that made them all pale. And if you're thinking of contesting my will, you should know I've had regular cognitive assessments for the past 5 years, all documented by independent doctors. I've also recorded every conversation where certain family members suggested I simplify my life by selling the farm to developers they just happened to know. The video ended. No one spoke. There's more, I said quietly. 3 years worth of videos, all safely stored in multiple locations. Grandma Rose was old, not stupid. She knew exactly what she was doing. Why didn't she say anything? Mom whispered, tears in her eyes. Because she was teaching me, I replied. Teaching me to see people for who they really are, not who they pretend to be when they want something. I gathered my things to leave but paused at the door. I have a meeting with Western Oil tomorrow. Not to sell, to negotiate leasing rights that will protect the land while still allowing controlled extraction. If you'd bothered to talk to Grandma Rose about her life, about our family history, you'd know that protecting the land was always more important than profit. Hannah, wait, Dad called. Maybe we can work something out. You're right, I said, my hand on the doorknob. But first, I think you all need to watch the rest of Grandma's videos, all of them. Then we'll talk about working things out. I left them there, surrounded by half-eaten dinner and shattered assumptions. The drive back to the farm was quiet, the late autumn sun setting behind the hills that had belonged to my family for generations. Grandma Rose had been right. Land does hold secrets. But the biggest secret she'd left me wasn't about oil or mineral rights. It was the understanding that true wealth isn't measured in dollars or acres, but in the choices we make and the legacy we leave behind. Part 2. The meeting with Western Oil went exactly as Grandma Rose had predicted in her journal. They tried to lowball me at first, assuming I was just some naive young woman who didn't understand the value of what she had. Their surprise when I countered with specific terms about environmental protections and sustainable extraction methods was almost comical. Miss Sullivan, the lead negotiator said, adjusting his tie nervously, these are unusually detailed requirements for someone who just inherited the property. I smiled, thinking of the thick folder of research Grandma had left me. My grandmother spent 30 years preparing for this moment, sir. I suggest you take her requirements seriously. The preliminary tests confirmed everything the secret surveys had suggested. The Sullivan farm sat atop one of the largest oil deposits in the state. But it wasn't just oil. There were natural gas pockets and rare earth minerals too. Grandma Rose hadn't just protected a farm, she'd safeguarded a fortune. Word spread fast. Suddenly my phone was ringing constantly. Calls from concerned family members, even distant cousins I hadn't seen since childhood, all asking about investment opportunities. Rachel was the first to try a different approach. She showed up at the farm one morning, uncharacteristically humble in jeans and a simple sweater. I brought peace offerings, she said, holding up a box of the Danish pastries I used to love. Can we talk? I let her in, more curious than anything. We sat at the kitchen table, the same one where Grandma Rose had served us cookies and milk during those childhood summers. I watched the rest of Grandma's videos, Rachel said quietly, staring into her coffee cup. All of them. I had no idea she felt so alone. You never asked, I replied. None of you did. You did. She looked up, her eyes wet. Every video, every holiday, every random Tuesday. There you were, listening to her stories, helping with the garden, just being there. I used to think she was playing favorites, but she wasn't. She was responding to the only person who treated her like a human being instead of a walking inheritance. The admission hung between us, heavy with years of unspoken truths. I'm not here to ask for money, Rachel continued. Well, not directly. I want to invest in the farm, properly, legally, through a business arrangement. I've been doing research on sustainable agriculture, and with the oil revenue, we could transform this place into something amazing. I studied her face, searching for signs of manipulation, but all I saw was something I'd never seen before: genuine interest. Why the change of heart? Rachel was quiet for a moment. In one of the videos, Grandma talked about how you used to ask her about every old photo on the walls, every piece of furniture, every family story. She said you understood that wealth isn't just about money, it's about history, connection, belonging. She met my eyes. I want to understand that too. Marcus took longer to come around. He tried legal threats first, hiring an expensive lawyer to scour the will for loopholes. But Grandma Rose had been thorough. Every document was in order, every decision was legally sound. When that failed, he switched to guilt tactics, sending Mom to plead his case. "Your brother's business is struggling," she said during one of her visits. "Just a small percentage of the oil rights would help him get back on his feet." "Like he helped Grandma when she needed her roof repaired," I countered. "Oh, wait, he was too busy buying his beach house that summer." But something changed when Marcus's wife left him, taking their kids and leaving him alone in the big house he'd worked so hard to afford. He showed up at the farm one rainy evening, looking lost. "I don't know who I am anymore," he admitted, sitting on the porch swing where Grandma used to tell her stories. "I spent so many years chasing money, status, success, and for what? My kids barely know me." I made him Grandma's special hot chocolate, complete with a splash of bourbon, and we talked until dawn. Really talked. For the first time in years. He told me about his fears, his regrets, the pressure he'd put on himself to be the successful, eldest grandchild. I shared Grandma's stories about our family's struggles and triumphs, the wisdom she'd passed down, which had nothing to do with money and everything to do with values. A week later, Marcus sold his beach house. "I want to invest in something real," he said. "Not just the oil, but the farm itself. Help me learn what Grandma tried to teach us." The oil contracts were finalized in the spring, the terms exactly as Grandma Rose had outlined: careful extraction, environmental protections, and a significant portion of the profits dedicated to land conservation and sustainable agriculture. The money was more than any of us had imagined. But that wasn't the real wealth I'd inherited. I used part of the proceeds to restore the farmhouse, preserving its historic character while adding modern amenities. The old barn became a community center where local farmers could share knowledge and resources. The fields everyone had claimed were worthless now sprouted organic crops, using techniques Grandma Rose had researched and documented in her journals. Rachel moved into the renovated guest house, throwing herself into sustainable farming with the same intensity she'd once devoted to her corporate career. Marcus started a foundation in Grandma's name, providing scholarships for young people interested in agricultural science and land conservation. 1 year after the will reading, we hosted a family reunion at the farm. Not just the immediate family, but cousins, second cousins, aunts, and uncles, many of whom hadn't visited in decades. We set up tables on the lawn where Grandma used to host her summer picnics. During the gathering, I played some of the happier videos from her collection: childhood birthdays, holiday celebrations, quiet moments of family joy she'd captured over the years. There were tears, but also laughter, and most importantly, a recognition of what we'd almost lost in our blind pursuit of material wealth. "You know what's funny?" Rachel said as we cleaned up afterward. "Everyone thought Grandma left you the farm because you were her favorite, but she left it to you because you were the only one who saw its real value." "The real value isn't in the oil," I replied, thinking of all the lessons hidden in Grandma's journals. "It's in the legacy, the history, the connection to something bigger than ourselves." Marcus joined us, carrying the last of the dishes. "She knew the oil money would get our attention," he said thoughtfully, "but that wasn't the inheritance she really wanted us to claim." He was right. The true inheritance wasn't the oil beneath the soil or the money it generated. It was the wisdom Grandma Rose had tried to share all along, about the importance of family, of stewardship, of understanding that real wealth grows not from what we take, but from what we nurture and protect. We still have our moments of tension, of course. Old habits and hurts don't disappear overnight. But we're learning, growing, trying to be worthy of the legacy Grandma Rose left us. The oil wells pump quietly in their designated areas, but the heart of the farm beats in the restored fields, the community gatherings, the family meals where stories and laughter flow as freely as Grandma's secret recipe cider. Last week I found Rachel's daughter, Sophie, sitting with one of Grandma's old photo albums, asking questions about every picture, every face, every story captured on those pages. It reminded me so much of myself at her age that my heart ached with joy. "You know," Sophie said, looking up with eyes so like Grandma Rose's, "I think Great-Grandma was kind of sneaky. She used the oil to teach everybody a lesson about what's really important." I sat down beside her, pulling out Grandma's recipe box, the one I now knew contained not just recipes, but life lessons encoded in the marginalia. "Want to learn how to make her apple pie?" I asked. "There's a secret ingredient." Sophie's eyes lit up. "Does it have something to do with why she left you the farm?" I smiled, thinking of all the layers of inheritance Grandma Rose had woven into this place. Some hidden deep underground, others right on the surface for anyone who cared enough to look. "Everything here has a secret ingredient, sweetheart. The trick is learning how to see it." As I taught Sophie the proper way to crimp a pie crust, I could almost hear Grandma Rose laughing, that warm, knowing laugh that always meant she was 10 steps ahead of everyone else. She'd known all along that the oil would bring the family back together, but she'd made sure we had to learn the important lessons before we could truly claim our inheritance. Sometimes, the best revenge isn't about getting even or proving people wrong. Sometimes, it's about giving them the chance to prove themselves right, even if it takes a hidden oil well and a grandmother's wisdom to make it happen.